Unit 2 Assessment Oral Accommodation. Read the next two selections, then choose the best answer to each question, starting from scratch. When we pulled up in the gravel driveway, Grandpa Joe was weeding his garden. He stood up, brushed off his knees, and greeted us with wide open arms. In his muddy work gloves, rumpled jeans, and a lime green garden shoes, he looked nothing like the refined grandfather I remembered. The ultra professional bank president who loved numbers had retired and let his hair run wild. I hadn't seen him since he sold his house in the suburbs, and I wasn't expecting him to look so different. After the hugs and kisses, Grandpa couldn't wait to show off his garden. Mom reminded him that she was just dropping me off and that she had to get back to Jessica's recital. But Grandpa went on pointing out his almost ripe tomatoes, complaining about the rabbits eating his lettuce, and laughing and lauding homegrown produce. The man who had been preoccupied for decades with interest rates now cared only about organic gardening. It worried Mom, the idea of Grandpa alone in that old cottage in the middle of nowhere. That was the real reason I was there, so I could report back. Once Mom was gone, Grandpa turned to me and said, "Now, Anthony, if I remember correctly, you like pasta with pesto sauce." I eagerly nodded. It was true. The grocery store by our house had the best pesto sauce. "That's perfect," Grandpa said. "We'll make some. Just look how my basil is coming up." We broke off some basil, pulled up some garlic, and then drove 15 miles to the nearest co-op grocer, where Grandpa bought Parmesan cheese, pine nuts, and olive oil. I spotted some ready-made pesto sauce, but I didn't mention it. "Do we need pasta?" I asked. "No," Grandpa replied proudly. "I make my own now." On the drive home, Grandpa asked, "What's the point of having a no-no if he never makes you a big home-cooked meal?" No-no, Italian for Grandpa. I never called him that. Even though he often talked about how his parents had come to the United States from Italy, I had never really thought of him as particularly Italian. But my parents made everything from scratch, like in the old country, he said. But I never seemed to have time to cook when I was working full time. Fortunately, your mom liked sauce from a jar when she was a kid. He winked at me. Grandpa had printouts of recipes he pulled from the internet. First, he mixed eggs and flours into dough, and then he cranked the dough through a pasta maker and over until he thought it was perfect. Then we got started on the pesto. While he cleaned the basil leaves, I grated the Parmesan. It wore. Homemade hot sauce. Mother goes out on the hunt in search of prime specimens, little red peppers, some green, some green. Her market of choice, a vegetable post by the side of the road. Year after year, you can find the old man there, under a perennial baking sun, his makeshift market in the wind. Mother slowly stalks the produce, scrutinizing the baby bananas, pores over the vianda, pauses to ask if I'd like her to cook some for dinner, then analyzes the aguacates, turning them over, squeezing them lightly as they rest in the palm of her wrinkled hand. Finally, she comes up on them, chubby as plum tomatoes, their skins shiny, smooth as plastic, their fiery nature screaming from inside glad sandwich bags where they hang on a tree. Back home, Mother patiently washes each one, grinds up spices with her wooden mortar and pestle, pounds with such force they the hanging pictures over the dinner table all dance to her cooking drum. And when her concert has ended, she packs them into an old vinegar bottle, adds a fresh splash of vinegar to the mix, then promptly places her concoction outdoors for ferment under a Puerto Rican sun. A vianda is a starchy root like a sweet potato or yucca. Aguacates are avocados. Read the selection and choose the best answer to each question, then fill in the answer on your answer document. Adventuring on the Nile. It has rapids, waterfalls, jungle, canyons, deserts, hippos, crocs, long, flat, beautiful sections, huge, beautiful sandbars. Pasquale Scaturo says, there is no other river in the world that can compare. The river that Scaturo is describing has been the subject of human curiosity and home civilizations for thousands of years. The Nile. The river has long been significant agricultural and transportation fixture in northeastern Africa, crucial to the people who depend on it. And yet, no one had ever made the journey from its beginning to its end by boat. Scaturo is a geophysicist and world famous guide and explorer. His job in oil and gas exploration and his love of adventure have led him on expeditions in some of the wildest, roughest parts of the world. In 2004, he and filmmaker Gordon Brown completed the first ever descent of the Nile River from its headwaters in Ethiopia to its mouth at the Mediterranean Sea. Their journey was documented in the IMAX film Mystery of the Nile. The Nile is the longest river in the world. When included the headwaters of both the Blue Nile and the White Nile, the Nile measures more than 4,100 miles. The White Nile begins in Rwanda and the Blue Nile begins in Ethiopia. They meet in Sudan to form the Nile River, which flows through Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea. The river covers terrain that includes mountains, deserts, gorges, lakes, valleys, dams, waterfalls, and large cities. It flows through the largest lake in the world, renowned antiquities such as the pyramids. Until Scoturo and Brown's expedition in 2004, no one has successfully traveled the length of the river, being from the Blue Nile, which is often considered the source of the Nile because it provides more than 85% of the water in the Nile River. Scoturo and Brown launched their watercraft from the spring of Sakala, the origins of the Blue Nile in Ethiopian highlands, in late December 2003. Their watercraft included two 16-foot inflatable rafts and a two-person kayak, a small support group, which at times included a journalist, an archaeologist, a photographer, and a hydrologist. joined the men and aided with some of the planning. But the bulk of the navigating, paddling, and filming, Brown was shooting their adventure with a 70-pound IMAX camera, fell to Scaturo and Brown. The pair traveled 3,250 miles in 4 months. During their journey, they encountered disease-carrying mosquitoes, sandstorms, extreme heat, and armed bandits. Several stretches of river passed through areas of unrest or civil war. Many sections of the Nile have life-threatening rapids, leading some to liken the river to the Mount Everest in terms of adventure and danger. Scaturo and Brown's boats flipped in the white water more than once. A crocodile attacked Brown's kayak and took a bite of his oar. In several areas, the river proved impassable, and the team was forced to briefly portage their boats and send the boats down dangerous waterfalls or rapids unmanned while they bypassed the area on foot. But for the dangers they encountered, they also met with awe-inspiring sights and experiences. Scaturo noted in his journal that for much of their time on the Nile in Sudan, they saw absolutely not a single other tourist, adventurer, traveler, or any other Westerner. Basically, we have had the entire Nile River to ourselves. What an adventure! From the white water gorges of Ethiopia to the desert plains of Sudan to the urban pollution near heavily populated Egyptian cities, Scaturo and Brown experienced the best and the worst of the Nile. Their journey revealed to them that the Nile is unifying is a unifying thread of civilization in northeastern Africa. All told, the Nile and its many tributaries flow through 11 African countries: Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda, countries with diverse cultures, beliefs, and environments that are all connected by the mighty river. One thing we hope this expedition highlights is the Nile brings people of different faiths and cultures together, Brown says. A photo of Scaturo and Brown in Alexandria, Egypt in 2004.